Let me show you what I got. This is the... Jeez. I have to set this down to get it out. Hang on. Alright. So, step back so you can see the whole thing. It's about 4 feet long. Looks like it's actually the end of a piece of rail. You can see the clean end there. And this end has obviously been gouged out with a oxyacetylene torch, so it's not square or flat. And the rail itself, so you can see it there. See how it's kind of peened over here on the edge. So we don't have any square corners. This side's pretty much the same. And they're not really flat on top. So this piece of bar stock is probably one of the best things I got. It's a nice piece. It's about 3/4 by 3 or something. And then of course a bunch of spikes. This bolt could be used to make something for a hardy. This kind of already looks like 90% of the way to a drift. Some nice pieces you could make tongs out of. This is a pretty good example of the different kinds of stuff that you can get off that scrap pile. I've been there like 4 or 5 times. There's always people there. No one ever says anything to me. Total scrap value of all this steel is about $3 at 3 cents a pound. So I really don't think anyone cares. The other good score was these plates. Used to be flat, but I'm pretty sure they're aluminum. So that's a pretty nice haul. Alright, moved into the shop. It was probably easier to do with the dolly than not. When I brought this piece of rail home, I guessed it weighed about 100 pounds. It turns out that was a pretty good guess. They rate train rail by its weight per yard. And this piece looks to be the lightest grade, which is 75 pounds. If it were heavier, this end right here would have been welded to the next section. But 75-pound rail is light enough that you can hold it together with tie plates and bolts. So 75-pound rail, that's 25 pounds a foot. And I got about 4 feet here. Should be right around 100 pounds, which it sure feels like it is. I can lift it, but my back complains. Yeah, it's pretty heavy, and the length makes it awkward to deal with. I could get it up into the vise. That's what I did with the other piece. But here's something to keep in mind. Potential energy is mass times height. If I lift the rail 3 feet to put it in the vise, and then I drop it, that's 300 foot-pounds of force. And they don't call them foot-pounds for nothing. So let's just keep it on the floor for now, okay? I had a look at the Wikipedia entry for train rail, and they claim that railroad track is typically 1084 hot-rolled steel. 1084 is a medium carbon steel, 7 or 0.8% carbon, and 0.7 to 1% manganese, which makes it tough and gives the rail good wear resistance. I don't know if you can see that, but we can cut into it with a file. Right? It's good for heat treating, it's hardenable, and it's good for forging, which means it will move when it's hot. The structure of it is made up of layers of perlite, not ferrite and cementite like low carbon steels. So the material is good for an anvil. It's tough, but not so hard that it'll crack when you hit it. So this piece is a piece that I cut off from here when I made the other anvil. So knowing that it's 1080, we'll keep that piece and maybe throw it in the fire and use it to make something. All right, but we are going to have to do something to fix this shape. The shape of your anvil will depend on what you want to do with it. So if you just want to make small knives or something, little flat, work with little flat pieces, you could probably get away with not having a horn. Right? You could leave the rail the way it is, maybe flatten the top a little bit. Right? Because a horn's only really required if you're making horseshoes or bending rings or things like that, which we're not going to make any horseshoes. It's nice to have on the anvil. Rail's about 3 inches wide, just a little over. I'm just kind of arbitrarily making some lines here. So I'm going to add a horn here, just partly for aesthetics and partly to show you how to do it. So that first section will be a horn. We'll give ourselves a good 6 inches of working space. But the thing I'm going to do different on this one than the last one I made is I'm going to leave a little spot at the end here to put a hardy in. Let's call that like 3 inches. And we'll taper it just a little bit this way. You can see I'm just eyeballing some of this stuff because we're doing this with an angle grinder. It's not going to be beautiful. All right, there maybe you can see a little better. The top of the anvil with square hole back in this side for a hardy. And then I think I'm going to try and add a Pritchard hole, which is for round bar. You can use that to bend stuff or make a hold down that holds things onto the anvil. And there you can see better the how we're going to cut the side. So here's where the money is. You might get the rail for free, but you're not getting the cutoff disc for nothing. This is about $50 worth of cutoff discs. These are really thin. I'll start with those. These are a tiny bit thicker, and they last a lot longer. But these thin ones, they break fast because they're thinner, but they cut through the web and stuff really quick because they're so thin. And then I got 2 of these grinding ones for cleaning everything up. And then we'll finish it up with a 80 grit. I think I have another one too. So maybe it'll be pretty when we're done. All right? But just be prepared. Everyone thinks you can make it, for nothing, but you will go through all of these discs. It's a lot of steel to cut. So be prepared for that. And that's pretty much the end of blade number 1. Once you can't get past the head of the tool anymore, you can use this blade to like grind the flat surface or something now, but for cutting, it's pretty much done. So you can see I've gotten this rail through there, and as the blade started getting smaller, I just went and used it where I could to start cuts on the edge of the web. And we've gotten almost all the way across there, and this one is basically just a scored line. It's not very deep at all, but this one's getting along. So I think for the next disc, gotta kind of plan where you're gonna use the widest disc. I'm gonna try and get down in here, across this line in the corners, and then once it starts to wear down a little bit, I'll use it to start marking this line, and maybe this one. This one should be a little easier. You can get a little deeper. The head doesn't get in the way quite so quickly, but it's nothing but a lot of grinding. And there's blade number 2 done. This one, see, this is what happens. I didn't even get very far. I was down trying to get into the web here, and you can see the tool's bouncing around a lot because you're hitting on here and here at the same time, which is pretty dangerous. And that's what happens. It gets caught, and then the edge tears, and all the pieces just come off. And the next thing you know, you got a lot smaller blade. So I didn't get very far. You can see kind of that I'm starting to get through there, but it's hard cutting inside the web. Got a long way to go. And I changed masks because I want to have both respiration and vision protection with this stuff, and the dust mask was just fogging up the glasses too much, so I had to go to a real mask. And sometimes they just evaporate from the inside out. And that is how you do that. You don't got to cut all the way through. I go to lunch now, boss. Yeah, when I'm not filming, I got my hand on it, so it's a little more stable, but it goes. Wandered a little bit on this side. Let's see. But that's fine. Way better to cut it with a hacksaw than to angle grind it, honestly. And I can always grind it down. Alright, I'm going to hacksaw a little bit inside there. lay it down, see if we can't get through the majority of the base, and then we'll hit it with a hammer and see if we can get it off. All right. This might be cheating a little bit since I already hit it from the other side and I know it's cracked. But there you go. You can see all my lovely hacksawing. We did get most of the way through it there. But this inside here is really hard to cut with an angle grinder because you can't get in here. You know, you can see I didn't even touch it on this side. And you can only get so deep with those wheels before they really start to grab and the edges shatter. So it's better if you can either cut them with a hacksaw for some of it. And there you can really see I did do the whole thing with the hacksaw pretty much. And that way I can, when I hit it with the hammer, it bends here and then it snaps. I think this is one of those situations where I need a device, an anvil, to make an anvil. Oh, Lord. It's an entire afternoon's worth of work to get that piece out right there. You can see, let's see if you can see it. Focus. There we go. I had it almost all the way through, except for down deep in here, but because it's on two sides of the triangle, it's hard to get the piece to bend and break. So I was trying to get down through here as far as I could, so I got in with the grinder. You can see the marks from the grinder, and then all this is hacksaw, and then more grinder, and then I just gouged this as hard as I could, which was really hard because the angle, I could only get in at certain angles because of the hitting the flange and the top of the rail. And then I couldn't hold on to it to get a nice bit of leverage to hit this way to get it off, so I had to strap it to the first anvil. This cut was the hardest one I've made yet because it was down into the sort of the middle of the web. It's got kind of this, let's see, the angle on the horn. The other one I cut much flatter so I could get the blade all the way in here, but I wanted this angle here, and it was really difficult. So you can see as I would get to the bottom of a blade, I think I'm on blade 6 now. Blade 5 cut for a long time. It was really good. So I just gouged across the top where the step is going to be to help lower the top of the anvil when I grind. Just made a bunch of parallel cuts over and over again. You can see I did it there too. And that'll just make it a lot easier to remove material when I start grinding. I'm going to cut some more. I'll cut an angle here on the horn like that. And we'll round everything over, clean all this up. But the hard part's done. Now it's just basically polishing. It's a lot of polishing, but it's polishing. The cutting with an angle grinder, on pieces this thick, it's really dangerous. My angle grinder, I don't have a guard. I wish I had the guard. I don't know what's happened to it. It's long gone. And I'm a little older and wiser now, and I wish I still had it. And you got to wear full protective gear. And sometimes it still gets away from you. See that? That's where it caught deep in the slot because my angle wasn't quite right, and it just jumped out of my hands. And it shattered this blade. Super dangerous. That's why I'm wearing steel toe boots and leather gloves and hearing protection and respiration and the whole 9 yards. Because I think if you were a kid, this would be too much. It's hard work and a lot of it. And you got to be a little bit smarter than the steel so that you don't hurt yourself. And you got to know how to use your equipment. So, not responsible for what happens in your garage. If you take this on, you're on your own. And I will say I probably wouldn't make another one of these. I'd find a different way to make an anvil. Because after having made 2 of them now, it feels like a lot of work for a product that isn't going to be what you really want in the long run to do blacksmithing on. So, your mileage may vary. I've switched to a grinder blade instead of a cutting blade. And I just started, this is the fun part to me, where you start shaping it. It goes pretty fast. You see good results, which is encouraging. It's not so easy to get stuff flat with the grinder, but it's actually really nice for making curves. But if you take and hold the grinder at a constant angle across an entire surface, you can get a fairly decently flat. There you can see the pattern of grinder marks are mostly all in one direction. Hold the wheel in a direction where it's cutting over most of the face, grinding over most of the face, and try and keep that angle over the whole thing, and that'll help you stay flat. And here I had a lot of grinding to get rid of all the cut marks and gouges. Let's see, I got more to go there. That one's pretty deep. And now that I turned it in, I started grinding the sides. that's pretty much done. Getting right down there. I could probably get a little more out of it, but I keep hitting on the quick change wheel. You can see I've buffed the edges down a little bit. So this one was the one that was left over from doing the first anvil. So I'm going to switch to a new one now, and let's make some more progress. Alright, here's the real problem with these stupid DeWalts. Look how short that shank is. DeWalt labeled grinding disc. If I put that on there, I can't get the nut on. So am I supposed to run it like that, upside down, close to the thing? Yeah, brilliant. That's DeWalt for you. And if I had the guard on there, I couldn't get, there's no way I could get that on there. Right size arbor, everything. There's no other options at the store. Those are the grinding discs for this grinder, and they don't fit. Brilliant. So here's what I had to do. That nut fits the arbor. I had to take it, put it on the sander and the grinder, flatten out the surface to get rid of this round part on the other side so that I could actually get some thread engagement, because it doesn't really start right away. So now it starts right away on the other side, and it's actually beveled to fit down inside the bowl of the grinding disc. So there you go. Make your own tools. Tempting to do the four corners and then come back and drill the middle. Maybe I'll do that. Back in with this one.
Are you filming?
I am now. So let me just show you this titanium high-speed drill bit set. Now, how can that be true? It's titanium and high-speed steel. But I think the truth is it's titanium nitride coated high-speed steel. So these are my two biggest drill bits. This one is actual high-speed steel from a really nice set. And this is this box store titanium coated. So it looks like 1/2 inch is the biggest I can get to. Let's see how we can make the hole bigger. Okay, I'm calling it for this video. It's already getting way too long. And I want to get this done and uploaded tonight, Saturday night. So there's a new video this weekend. So I think we're going to call this part 1 of how to make an anvil out of a piece of railroad track. I spent all day getting the Pritchel holes in and the Hardy hole. The Pritchel came out pretty good. It's a straight 1/2 inch hole. The seat here is flat. It's going to be flatter. The horn is round. It needs to be rounder. The working area is still kind of, it's beveled. I don't know if you can really see it. Let's see if we can focus. So you can kind of see it compared to the flat area, how it's got it curves like this. There it is. See it? So got to decide if we're okay with that or we want to change that. But it's starting to look good. Getting this Hardy hole in, I don't know. I should have gone with a smaller hole first and then made a drift. Now I got to make a big drift. Drift all that out. Or at least a big-ish drift and drift through the middle and then get in there with files. I think is where we're going to end up. Looks terrible at the moment, but we'll clean that up. So it's probably 1 inch. Let me get a tape measure. Well, I'll have to take my word for it. There's one around here somewhere. You can see the shop's a mess. I've had every toolbox and tool out, mostly looking for cold chisels that I couldn't find, but I also was looking for these end mills, this 4-flute, which I did manage to get through the work in the middle. I just kept sharpening drill bits on the grinder, lots of oil. They went through. I made these clamp downs. Set up like that. The other one's here to hold the anvil down onto the plate. What else did I make? So this bar, not this bar, this bar is the middle of that cat's paw that I cut apart, and it's really hard, but it's too wide to chisel with. This is a wood chisel that was already in really bad shape, so don't cry for it. It got a lot shorter when I started smacking on it. Apparently the tang's buried in there somewhere. But that was pretty good, actually. It'll cut steel. It's real hard. And I was careful when I ground it not to get it hot, so not to anneal it. Sharpened it on the diamond stone. This crappy old diamond plate. And then the last thing I tried was making a chisel. You can see how that went. I just could not get it hot enough to quench it. It's raining. I don't want to fire up the forge. I was trying to do it with a torch. It's not the way to do it, obviously. We don't really know if this rebar is hardenable. But if this doesn't work, I'll find some other piece of steel around here that I can turn into a brooch, and then we'll smack it through there and get that hole squared out so we can make some hardy stuff to go for it. The Pritchel's usable already, so if I held this anvil down, I could start using it right away. But I'll probably keep using this one because it's mounted for the moment to get this one tuned up. We'll see. I may have to mount it to be able to drift it. If so, I'll probably just take it outside and put it on a stump that I have and mount it with some railroad spikes, and then we'll drift it. But yeah, it's a mess. Here's the death toll on the blades. I think we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a grinder. There's another grinder. That's this one that's been used up. Started in with this. This is the nut that I had to make. I think I have 2 cutoff wheels left and the one that's on the angle grinder. The angle grinder's starting to sound pretty rattly. I think the bearings are going. Like I said, this anvil, making them this way, not sure I'd do it again. If I had a milling machine, it'd be a different story. I could do a lot more work with a mill. But to do it manually with an angle grinder, it's hard work. So, that's the end of part 1. Thanks for sticking with me this long, if you have. And there'll be part 2. We'll be making the brooch and broaching that hole. All right. See you next time. Oh, and I almost forgot. I got to add special thanks to John Moore. Couldn't have done it without him. He's responsible for the grinder blades, and he was here all day today helping me clean up. So that's my stepdad. Thanks, John.